Hello, I'm the Miami Autism Dad, Victor Antunes, the inclusive Miami Realtor, and this is the Autism Podcast at Miami's Community Newspapers. Today I'm with Mary Partin and Michael Marino of the Dan Marino Foundation. Mary is the CEO, and Michael is the Tech Community Coordinator and a board member. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
This has been long in the making. I met you guys personally at the
Autism Speaks last year.
Last year, yeah. Time flies. Yeah. It goes quick. So, Michael, when people hear the last name Marino, I'm sure like a lot of baggage comes with that. How was it growing up Marino and autistic at the same time?
Well, I mean, I guess like I mentioned, being my dad's son, the Marino name and all that, it comes with, I guess it comes with some expectations, but there's also a lot of fun that comes with that. I get the opportunity to do things that, maybe not a typical kid or a typical person growing up would get to do, but there are those expectations and those, things that you really deal with, being, the son of a celebrity in a sense. What I would say with the growing up autistic, I think I never really felt overly autistic growing up. I kind of knew that this was a thing, and I was told from a young age. But my brothers, my sisters, my mom, they never really treated me specifically different. I've always just kind of been myself growing up. So I guess that I kind of, as I got older, you kind of really notice those things a bit more. I think probably the most noticeable thing, at least from a growing up standpoint, was, when I was never really that verbal growing up, especially at a young age. My mom used to tell stories about how I used to point at everything. If I wanted something, if I wanted a cereal, I would just point at it and she'd have to figure out, exactly what I was trying to express to her. And just kind of over the years, understanding myself a bit more, understanding, autism a bit more, and kind of understanding where I sort of fit within those bounds, and just really sort of growing into that and understanding better.
Let me ask you about the verbal part, because my daughter, she's 8 years old and she's nonverbal. Were you nonverbal or just like less verbal?
Very early on, my mom and dad could tell you a lot. This is, when I was like 2 or 3 years old. Okay. So, you only remember so much from back then. But, yeah, I mean, I would say definitely nonverbal in the beginning, and again, a lot of pointing and stuff. And I mean, eventually those words would come, but there were therapies and doctors that I work with to really sort of build those skills, over time. And as you can see now, I can conversate just as well as anybody else. But, it was rough. It was hard.
As a dad, we try not to ever lose hope on our kids because we always want the best for them. Do you remember at what age was like maybe a turning point for you with the verbality?
If I would have to say, I mean, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that, I guess. Again, it's all of kind of a whirlwind back then, especially you're doing all kinds of different things. You're seeing all kinds of therapists and doctors. And, as a kid, you don't really realize how much different that portion of your life is, whereas I was still, playing with my brothers and sisters, and seeing other people, seeing family, doing stuff. I mean, even when my dad was playing, going to the games and stuff like that. But, you don't really understand when you're that young exactly kind of what's going on, even when people are explaining it to you. I just always saw it as, well, we're going to see Dr. Tuchman, or we're going to see this therapist or that therapist, and not really think much of it at the time until, you get older and you realize, oh, wait, we were doing these things back then that, not, a neurotypical person might be doing. And those experiences are, they help make me who I am today, of course. So.
And do you remember the diagnosis, or just always part of the conversation?
No, not really. Exactly. Again, I was very young, that's a kind of age where you only have so many memories. And again, growing up, I never really sort of, how can I explain it? I can never really say that like I grew up specifically knowing I was like autistic. I knew maybe there was something up or something different, but never like, walking around like, yeah, I'm autistic. Yeah, I'm autistic. Yeah, I'm autistic. I just kind of grew up living my life, and those parts of it were what they were.
Yeah, we've done the same thing with our daughter. Like, my wife, she's Peruvian. So culturally, they're a little bit behind us as far as like progressiveness. So she was a little bit like scared about just like telling the family for whatever reason. And then me, because I'm from Miami, I was just like, no one's going to care. So my daughter we talk about it. Like, she's nonverbal. It's hard to get her attention. So you can't have that conversation with her, but with family and friends, it's just part of the conversation. We don't try to hide it. And I think that's just the way to go.
What Claire always said was that his mom was that they thought he was deaf, that he was about 3 years old, and that her mom had come in to visit. And that, the same way what you had shared earlier, that, okay, yeah, he's just a really good, Claire always said he's such a good baby, that he just would play with his toy and that stuff. So, yeah. So, it reacts in different ways that parents notice. But the one thing I think that all parents have in common, it becomes you're immersed, and you made mention of your wife. There's still that old time when I started, 4 decades ago, where you still had refrigerator babies and somehow parents had done something, especially mothers had
the refrigerator
done
moms. Yes.
Yeah. And that's untrue. And Tylenol and all these silly things. It's amazing how you see a cycle where they're coming back to some sort of blame on parents and it's not that. It's not that. So I think culturally, sometimes it's not unusual. You go to the Far East, a lot of cultures still, like, what have I done wrong, But I see as a common with all parents is that to do anything to help their child live their best life. And you see, you're living it, you'll do anything for that child,
Of course.
Yeah.
And you were born in the 90s, right?
88.
80
is my birthday year, yes.
I
but grew up through the 90s and all that, yes.
I graduated high school in 1988. Can you imagine? So times were different when you were a kid, as far as like autism, because it was already a thing, but it wasn't a thing. Like now it's like everybody's talking about it. Like when my daughter, when she had her regression, I kind of knew, I put it off for a while because I didn't want to like look at it, but I kind of knew, whereas your parents thought you were deaf. But that's would have been normal back then because, it wasn't part of the zeitgeist.
Well, the diagnosis back then was like 1 in 12, every 1,200 children.
Right.
And now you got the 1 in every 31. So awareness. When my, time, I remember there were kids who were kind of quirky in school. We're talking about the 50s and 60s. And, but no one spoke about it. And typically they did not go to attend school. They were just that child that was home. And kind of the family took care of them. So there really has been a great awareness, and it's a great thing, so.
When I was a kid I remember it was kindergarten, there was a boy who would stim all day long. And he just like quirky. He's off
That's
a little
what
bit.
we said, yeah.
But the word autism, plus I was 5 years old. So the teacher aren't going to tell you anything. But maybe even the teachers didn't know. But now when I look back, he was stimming. And then all through high school, like you're saying, that there would have been like quirky kids, like Sheldon from that TV show.
Exactly. When you see it. Yeah, exactly.
Whereas now you're like, okay, he may be on the spectrum, but back then it was just like, no, you're just quirky. Now, Mary, when families come to you with young kids looking for direction or guidance in that sense, like what do you tell them?
Well, the first thing I say, especially if it's a newly diagnosed, they're shattered. They're scared. Oh my gosh, what am I, they're just any answer and what's the quick fix and what. And so the first thing I'll say to someone is that, we're going forward, and it's not all the, what did I do wrong or what's wrong? Like, don't look at all that. We're moving forward. You have a beautiful child. And now we're going to take and get the resources they need and to match into what they do need. That's the one thing the foundation can do, and there's a lot of great organizations that do that too. But let's go forward. Let's meet your child where they are, and let's see what we do now to take and to get them to live their best life. If it's, speech and language, if it's, it's ABA, it's all of those things put together. And so there is resources. And there are people also that have been at this a very long time. And by now, literally, I don't think I'm exaggerating if like Michael Alexandria and all of us, thousands and thousands and thousands of these first-time parents that have come in and said, "Oh my gosh, something's wrong," But it's a course. It's nothing, that I think a lot of people would say, "Oh, I would love, to have this in my child's life," but it's not a life stopper. It's the beginning. It's where you are. Just like anyone that has anything that they're dealing with, this is, you meet your child where they are, and we go forward. And I hear a lot of parents say, well, yeah, a lot of parents say, "Oh, well, they'll never, be that baseball player or whatever." Well, that may not have happened anyways, but what will they become? What are the opportunities out there? No matter if it's a CEO of Microsoft, which it can be, or if it's someone it's a happiness and a fulfillment and being part of a community in life. So that's what I say, because typically people are scared. Yeah.
I've had people come on the podcast or had conversations with people that their child's pediatrician or psychologist will tell them, "Oh, wait."
Yes.
Wait for what?
Yes.
Wait for what?
Yeah.
Like the evaluation. Because, if you get an evaluation and it's wrong, well, it's wrong. But if it's right, you can start with early intervention. Now, Michael, you're often cited as an example of the benefits of early intervention.
Yeah.
Tell me, what did that early support give you?
I mean, looking back at it now, I guess I would say it gave me the opportunity to live the version of my life that I get to live, the most fulfilled version of that life, for whatever it is, especially when we talked earlier about how, I started nonverbal and all that, if my mom and dad had just waited, you never know where that could have gone to the point where I could have those same communication issues. And I'm very glad that they went ahead and did the stuff that they did for me, because it really gives me the opportunity to be able to come on a podcast like yours, or, to be able to just go out into my community and be able to talk with my brothers, my sisters, my friends, and everybody, and be able to enrich their lives, and they can help me enrich my life and all that as well.
Now, how would you tell people that support doesn't also mean guarantees?
Well, no, it doesn't. Every individual is always going to be different. Everybody is, every single therapy, everybody's going to, how can I say, they're going to take those experiences differently. They're going to take that support differently, and you just have to adjust for the individual. And sometimes you can try as hard as you can, but it's not going to have the same kind of effect that it might have for somebody else.
If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Exactly.
And so everyone, just like you or I, if we're doing something, we will react differently on training or whatever it is. And so, but that earlier intervention is critical, because again, meeting a child where they are is they'll begin, that's your baseline, and then good therapists and good professionals will work with that person where they are, and they will get them to their best life. That's the goal. That's the goal.
And I'd love to talk to your mom and ask her, how did she know to get you into early intervention? Because 1988, that was or 1990, let's say, when you're 2 years old, and now they can see some of the behaviors. How did she know, or did she speak to a pediatrician? How did she get that guidance?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to answer that for you.
Claire Marino is fearless.
Yeah,
Claire Marino, and that is Michael. The blessing of Michael is that his family and how they knew that their journey with Michael. I mean, they went to Chicago once they heard the name or the word autism. Danny tells the story where they came in and they looked in the encyclopedia.
Of course,
they didn't even know what it was, and so again. Claire Marino if there's something for her children, especially, she's that type of person that will do anything to help her child or to find out. But the beauty of it is that Dan and Claire together are also people who are they care about others. And in their journey with Michael, it was important to them. They knew other parents who maybe didn't have the resources or, even the awareness to do other things. And that's why it was important for them when they began and founded the foundation and then everything that's come beyond that. And we always say, and Michael does a great job of this, about how the foundation has really mirrored Michael's life. I mean, it's coincidentally because everyone grows, but as we really started out with a focus on diagnosis in younger children, Dan Marino Center with Variety Hospital, which is now Nicholas Children's, as they grew, families would still come to us and say, all right, now I have a middle school age child and they're not in activities, or they're not, as they got older, they don't have the job or the opportunity for internships for jobs. And then it got to be post-secondary and that. And so, and again, that's the blessing of Mike Marino. Yeah. If not, to this family, there's hundreds of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
Now, it's interesting about the word autism, because I remember the first time I heard the word autism was with the movie Rain Man, which I think was 1988, the year that you were born. So yeah. It was right around there. Uh-huh. So like, until then, I'd never heard the word autism. And then now it's like, you got to live in a cave to not hear the word autism. And what's also cool about the Dan Marino Foundation is that it was started by parents. Because I've had countless people on the show and countless conversations with, like there's Dan Marino Foundation, founded by parents, Parent to Parent, founded by parents, Advocacy Network, founded by parents, Awesome Foundation, yeah, all these different organizations founded by parents. Because a lot of times I think that we look toward the government. Well, the government's got to fix everything. Well, the government brings the big dollars, but it's the parents that like fill in those gaps. Because I don't think that the government could do what your dad and your mom did.
I mean, if I would mirror that, I guess I would say, more than anybody would know would be the parents themselves. They're the ones who are dealing with their child. They're the ones who are dealing with the people and having to gonna understand it more than some big government agency or some, so having those foundations, having those people that are willing to do that are, those are the ones that are going to be able to understand what's really needed. To help their children or to help anybody else.
But those government dollars are important.
Very important.
When you're looking at research. And we were lucky to have a House Speaker, Danny Perez, who, has experience with autism. And so but along the way, the state of Florida has been very supportive of the foundation.
Very. Yes.
Yeah.
Of the whole community.
Yeah. But speaking personally, when we've gone to them over or certain things that needed to be done and that, they've been, of course, it's great for government to work with a foundation because we match everything. We have dollars too. So I think that's the great win-win of the partnerships, so yeah.
Mike, looking at you, talking to you, the life that you put together, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you're cured.
I've heard that before. You're not the first and you probably won't be the last.
But how do you address that?
Look, the truth is that, I guess, yes, there are people that can feel that way and you can communicate with me and I can understand how you could feel that way. But if you really got to know me on a day-to-day, you could see those little things, some of those little stums or some of those little, ticks and stuff and that come with that. And also it's things like, like I'm great with eye contact, but you can sit here watching us right now and every once in a while, I'll pull away every once in a while and come back. So there are those little intricacies, things that I know that, a person on the spectrum has and deals with. I guess over the years have found ways to, I wouldn't want to say combat those, but the sort of, if you want to say mask, fine. In my own words, sort of how to just live with those things and understanding how they affect me so that I can, do the things I need to do to be able to, communicate however I wish to communicate, however I want to live and all that.
I would say too, because I work with Mike, but what I love about him is the other adults. We have an adult program called Hub to Connect where people come in, and do different things. Michael is so great at, and a lot of our staff are, but maybe it's a bias on my part, but I think he has, because he's lived as someone with autism and he relates and he's such a role model. I mean, I think first of all, in speaking to people, he can speak. We all can talk, but unless you've lived with autism, and you that's a special gift that you have in talking to other people. And I just, that's one of those things, no matter what all that he's done in that, I just watch him at times, where he's not watching me, but watching. But he's so good with speaking to people with autism and they open up to him, I believe, in a way that they don't to other people, Yeah. And so that's just, and that's he's a board of director, in the Marino family with us, but as having him as part of the staff of the foundation, and in transition as leadership. My goal is that Michael will be CEO of this foundation one day and be a great one, I think. So who better to lead a foundation with autism than someone who's experienced that? So, yeah.
Mary, when you have parents come into your system, into your ecosystem, you're going to have parents like me that I know that there's no cure. But you're going to have parents that think that there is a cure.
Yeah.
How do you handle that conversation?
Well, I always redirect it. Who am I to say, the foundation early on, we have a Marino Autism Research Institute, which was a virtual institute that Michael Alexandria was a part of, and people from UCLA. And it was all about cause and cure. But this is 30 years ago. But there were so many people who were reaching out to us. I had talked to Dan and Claire, and I said, because we're not a huge foundation, I said, let's focus on people, what they need right now. Let's make that our priority. And they very much did that, But I tell people, maybe there'll be a cure one day. Who am I? But let's talk about now what your child needs. I'll always try to redirect into, the important right now is the person sitting in front of you or the person in your home. It's not that cause and cure, but it's not up to me because sometimes people need that in their life, and who knows? I pray for it every day. That would be great. If there's this magic wand and everything's fine. But I also know, autism is such a different, you meet people like Michael and you go, oh, autism, that's not so bad. Okay. But then you and I both know that I also meet people that need a lot of supports and it's a different story. And, so I never, who am I? I'm never going to tell people, oh, don't wish for that, but let's work on what we have right now, which is what our resources are on your child. Yeah.
Right. Now you mentioned Hub to Connect. Tell me about that.
So Hub to Connect, we did have 2 post-secondary schools. The thing I like about what we've done, and I'm biased, 27 years, I'm a little biased, but we'll take something that's a need that we see in the community that's not really being addressed at the time. And so in 2009, 2010, it was the gap in post-secondary. There were kids that would graduate or they would come out of school, but they really couldn't even pass the test for VOTEC schools or going into a university. And so we began the Marino campus, which was I want to say certified, but it was accredited post-secondary school. We had one at FIU and we had one in downtown Fort Lauderdale. But what happened was, which is good, and in a lot of this we've done, another example was the center that we had started on diagnosis and stuff and treatments, but now Broward College and FIU with their Embrace program, they began then to start these same programs that we had. And so at that point, we went ahead and we discontinued those programs because they weren't necessary anymore. Other people were doing them who I felt were better even positioned if you're a part of a major university and stuff. So, but now we do have adults who they didn't really fit a program. They really weren't going post-secondary, and now they're in their late 20s, 30s, late 30s. And so we were trying to find ways now for them to get in the community. I had mentioned the first 30 years of the foundation, we worked with people with autism to be ready for the community. And now, because there are so many people and there's so much to be done, we really shifted our focus to working within the community to prepare them for people with autism. And so the Hub to Connect came along. It's a program where there's all sorts of different opportunities to be in the community. We get people, we prepare them, we have different workshops and stuff so that they're prepared to go out in the community, but we're getting them out there in volunteer positions and working at the airport, and they're not really jobs. The folks we have, it would be our hope that they would have employment one day, but they're still working down that pathway. There's certain things that make that difficult for them. So that's the hub to connect, bringing adults into the community, connecting them to community, the adults to the community, and vice versa. So we've begun what we call ACE, which is a training within the community, where we started like with Parks and Recs, but now different private Spirit Airlines, different people that we're going out and doing the trainings for. And that's one of the things that we're working on, is to make that use technology for virtual reality, because now we have to send people out to a site, but there's such a need for it. We're trying to find that way to have a bigger footprint. And so that's the other thing about the foundation, is that we've realized that just being in one spot, it's great for the people who are around us, but there's such a need. I mean, we get calls from all over the nation. And so that's where we've started to use technology to try, even with employment programs and everything else, so that we can have that wider footprint and serve more people.
Now, you mentioned that there's a difficulty between getting these, I guess, unpaid internships and then to paid. What's the difficulty? What's the hardest part?
Sometimes it's just not going to work, for a certain individual. I'm talking about individuals where it's a little more challenges and a lot more support's necessary. And so what happens is it'll be fine if we have a job coach or a support person there, but you can't continue, no organization.
It's difficult.
Yeah, that's difficult. So we really want to take that. Again, we're trying to identify where there's this gap for certain people. And so that's what we're looking at. Yeah. But I will say that we've had amazing programs where the preponderance of people do go out and work and are able to get those jobs, and stuff. So I was talking about kind of a little segment that we have in this program that's different. Yeah.
Michael, I visited the facility once in Dania, and there were a lot of adults there doing job training.
Yeah.
And there was also a virtual driving program that I was told that you run.
Yeah. So we have our little tech center area over there, where members could come in. They could, we have virtual reality headsets. We have iPads. They get the opportunity to use those for what they wish. Have some experiences in that. We also have our driving simulator, where we were doing it was an opportunity for members to sign up and come and sort of get that experience of driving. Now, of course, it's not like getting in a real car and being, something I tell it's nice to have them have that experience and even get to learn. We have one of our members who I helped him, learn and get his learner's permit, and he's working on, he has his license now, and that's incredible, because for him, he's going to get an opportunity to be able to drive. He's going to have an opportunity to maybe get a car and be able to, drive around with him and his family. And it opens up so much of the world for him. Now, is that possible for everybody? Well, everybody's needs are different. But what I would say is at least giving them that opportunity, even to just have that experience. We have one of our members who's a little more, has more physical needs. And he can't touch the pedals on the wheels. So, but he wants to drive, and he wants to at least to have that experience. So he'll get up behind the wheel, and I'll just kind of take the little gear shifter, and I set it up to where I can just, all right, here's the gas, and we can go, and I can do the brake for him and everything. So he at least gets to enjoy that experience and enjoy, those moments, for himself. And it does a lot for his confidence. It does a lot. And I want to try and give that to everybody I can when I speak with them, when I meet them, so our members, our individuals, I want them to make them feel like, somebody's there for them and give them those opportunities.
Yeah, I think that sometimes as parents, we might even limit our own kids, because I've met people on the spectrum that I would have guessed that you can't drive, and then they drive.
Yeah.
That would have been my guess.
Yeah.
And so and then there's people that think that you probably could drive. Like, no, I can't drive.
Yeah. There's that too.
Yeah. So like as parents, like we can't, and you as being a leadership role, we can't put our expectations on other people. Now you guys also have the training center. What kind of jobs are you training people for?
I mean, it really sort of depends. I know we do a lot of hospitality right now.
Just like anywhere else in Florida, where are the jobs? And hospitality is a
tourism.
Hospitality is a big one for our guys. Warehouse, especially with the tech, a lot of our young people, because
Amazon's down
Walgreens
here.
and Amazon at Publix. They have such great opportunities, and there's this. Everything's going to where it's tech supported, and so and also it's a job where the conveyor belt's going, and if the green light's on, you put that in there, and for a lot of people, they enjoy a job where it's very structured and they know what they're going to do. It's repetitive, and we just make sure that the sound is correct and in the lighting and that sort of thing. A lot of times people, employers, oh, well, I don't want to hire somebody with any disability because, oh, boy, it's going to cost me money and accommodations and all that stuff. And so we really go into where we hear a job is available, and we have some great people on staff that keep their ears open all the time. And then we'll go in and have those discussions. We'll take a look at the area, and many times it's just making sure that the area accommodates easily. And it's not like buying big equipment or anything. It's just maybe a lighting or a sound or something like that. So
I had a conversation with Dr. Michael Alessandri about employing autistic persons. And he said that actually ends up being good for the bottom line. And the reason he said is that an autistic person will follow the rules the way a neurotypical person won't. What has been your finding in this?
Well, absolutely. Well, everything isn't perfect, and so there's some that there may be something wrong. But, one example is one of the hotel chains that we had. And we were lucky that the manager, then we got a lot of hotels from it, because he found that when we would put people on staff and we'd work with them, it sort of encouraged the entire staff. Like he said, before this person, especially, there was 2 people that had come in, that the staff would be like, oh, and they were doing landscaping and maintenance and things like that. But when our young people came in and they had such a positive attitude, they were working and hi, and how are you, and they also saw, they began to support that person. So it empowered them. And so he said that he was keeping staff longer, that they had higher productivity, and so all these positives again. But I hear this story a lot.
Yeah.
I hear where somebody goes in hospitals, where they're like line people and that. And funny stories, like we had a young person go over to one of the hospitals, and he was setting up trays, food trays. And so the staff there had a way that they would set up food trays. Well, when a lot of people with autism, they see things in a different way, and it's kind of more, they don't have all these how it should be. They just see, well, this would make more sense. And so he ended up cutting like 13 seconds off of every tray because he put it together differently. And so there's things like that matter. Now, you also have coders, and you have code readers, and you have people that develop technology and AI. And so this just permeates through every job, how it is. So no, definitely, yeah.
Michael, a big concern from parents obviously is the transition to adulthood. And independence. When did that begin for you?
If I would say, when I really became independent was after turning 18, graduating high school. I actually moved from my home, my childhood home. I moved by myself to Orlando. Now I had a roommate at the time. But I was there on my own. My parents were hours away from me. I could always call them if I needed them. But if I had to handle something, I had to handle it on my own. If I wanted to go do something, if I wanted to be somewhere, showing up to class on time. And, I was always, as a kid, always very good about, kind of sticking to schedules and sticking in between. But it's different when, you're there, and then also, you have your support system behind you to make sure you're doing the right thing. When you're on your own, you kind of have to create that for yourself. And I could, it didn't take me very long because, like I said, I was always that kind of person. But at the same time, nobody's here keeping up if I'm doing my homework correctly, or I'm making sure I'm on top of my studies. I can just kind of do whatever I want. And it's sort of learning the ins and outs of that, and being able to understand what actually being independent is, which isn't just, it's not just being able to live on your own and do your own thing. It's being able to live your own life well in doing those things, and being able to have the, being able to do that.
Now, when you went off to school, what was the hardest part for you, and what advice might you give to a young person making that same transition?
Um, I guess I would say just to just to make sure you're trying to be on top of your own life. You're there on your own, and you need to be able to make sure that you need to make sure that you're on top of those things. Whether it's a rent being paid, whether it's showing up to your job on time, whether it's those parts of being independent that are going to give you those things that you want. When you want to be able to go out on the weekend, when you want to be able to hang out with your friends and do stuff, there are those responsibilities that you need to make sure you're on top of first before you have to do that other fun stuff.
And was your friend group a mix of neurotypical and neurodivergent? How did that work out for you? The social part.
So when I was more in college, I guess I wouldn't say as much neurodivergent people. It was more, the students that were there at the college. And, I think part of that too is maybe, I wouldn't say that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but, it also at the same time, it forces me to have to be around different kinds of people. I think, when I was in school when I was in high school and stuff, I would be in sort of the the other classes where there would be other neurotypical or people who are, a little different, I guess you could say, in those sort of smaller classes. Well, when I went to college, it wasn't like that. You're in the regular class. Like there were maybe some small, like I get more time on a test or something.
Mm-hmm.
But so you have to interact with, all different kinds of people. So, you kind of learn how to interact with those people. You kind of learn how those people interact with you, and then you can sort of adjust and move forward.
That's great. Now, Mary, when you're helping parents prepare their kids for that transition, like what words of advice or wisdom would you give them?
It's tough. Start early. What happens is someone will come and they have a 30-year-old, and now they're thinking about transition. So the earlier you start thinking about transition from preschool to elementary to middle school to high school. But I mean, when they're middle school, you already have to be thinking. And I hear a lot of, well, it'll be fine. We have family and there's grandma and grandpa and all that. You can have the most loving home ever, but every individual deserves their own life, what that looks like. And to have that opportunity, be it if they're living in a group home, if they're living in some, we've got all sorts of, I think one of our biggest things that we work on right now is trying to find great independent living, be it in Jacksonville or the Noah's Landing or somewhere, we that's tough, in Casa Familia, things like that. But early, because by the time, typically when I hear about transition, someone is transitioning out of high school. And boy, that's starting late. It's starting late. You've got to prepare your child for independence and for whatever that might look like, because too many times I have families, they're in their 60s or 70s, and all of a sudden they're gone. And now there's this individual that has never known anyone but their nuclear family. And it's like pulling the rug out from under them.
In a really bad way.
Yeah.
Because it sounds almost clean. You pulled the rug out, but it's really hard. It's
very hard. So start early with transition. And it looks differently for everyone because everyone's different. But be thinking that earlier. And in the Spanish culture and that, it's like, no, they're always going to be here, and grandma and grandpa and the nieces and siblings will take care of them. But that's still not their life. They, some families, all right, well, yeah, we all go on vacation together and we all, but that person, especially as you begin to speak to people with autism and that are older, they want to do with their friends, or they want to have their place, where they come in. So, and when I say they, I don't talk for everyone's different, but just in a generality, they, whatever that looks like, they want to have that piece of independence. So to start early and to think about that young person more so than what feels good or protected. It's hard not to protect. You have families that have fought for their children from the day they were born, be it a pediatrician to get that assessment, be it in school to get the right combination of classroom. And it's always a fight, always a fight. So it's tough because you've protected your child, you've been there. And so just like any parent, it's harder for a parent of children with autism to say, okay, well, let them go out and do their own, because you're going to protect. You don't want them to be hurt. You don't want them to be in a vulnerable situation, but so it's a toughie. Yeah.
Mary, I've seen it from afar. You've seen it up close.
Yeah.
What happens when these bridges don't exist?
Not good.
What does not good mean?
Adults take their lives.
Yeah.
People that never, and it's hard to talk about it, but I've seen just the worst. I've seen
and the ones that don't take their lives, what does the state do with them? Because if you're a low functioning adult and you need to be taken care of, and then all of a sudden mom and dad are gone, what happens to them?
You go into some sort of group living, and not all are, sometimes every situation is different. Families will get together. Hopefully there's some sort of trust in place or some mechanisms in place for the added care. But again, the earlier that, people go, oh, group homes or whatever that is. But, and like places like Noah's Landing or Casa Familia or something like that, the earlier you can have some decision-making into where that child is, and you can do due diligence, and you can see that it's a good combination. I mean, that's what happened. That's the best case scenario. And that, again, is to really start to look early. It's hard to let your child move out. It's hard to have but it's some things that are the hardest doesn't mean that they're not the best, on how that is. The state does, Agency for Persons with Disabilities, they get pounded all the time, but I know the people that work there, and if people start out with good heart, and it's hard, when you have 15,000 people on a waiting list, or you have, so they are really doing the best. So I'd say the best thing we can do as a community is to support them and try to be more involved, just like people who are aging, a lot of times, well, they're put into assisted living and that's the end of it. And we just go away and government will take, or somebody will take care. I think community has to be involved. And that's volunteering, showing up at places and being a part of that and being supportive to the systems that are there. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back just for a second to the worst case scenario.
And I don't want to dwell on that because I don't want people to be.
No, of course not, because there can be happy endings.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have seen suicides of young people, of adults. I've also seen people taking other people's lives. And when I see that, I think to myself, like the last case I saw, it was a mom, and she did a terrible thing. And I thought to myself, like, she's a single mom. That's really hard. And the kid was low functioning. Yeah. And I don't know her or her situation, but there are a lot of programs out there. And I talk to parents all the time. Like I was talking to this one autism grandma, never heard of CARD.
Absolutely.
I thought, how can you be like in your mid 60s and you've never heard of Miami-Dade County's biggest autism organization? It's like all these great resources exist, but if you don't plug in, they might as well not even exist.
Vocational rehab. Rehab. And so what happens is that's something, boy, you sign up the minute you can to get onto that. But, we speak with Miami-Dade schools in Broward and Palm Beach, and we're told that they do, especially in the transition, that they do, but I still have parents continually say, never heard of CARD, never heard of VR. And the first that we call when I say that we have a wonderful person named Susan Morentis that works with us on the community and has worked 20 some years with us. And she has a child who's 35 now. And so she really brings, like Michael brings, she brings this as a parent, this valued knowledge and someone I kind of give her teaser, but if a parent calls, we may be locking the place up at 7:00 at night and she's still on that phone. She's that, but immediately we give those resources because we know with VR and CARD, it's amazing. It's some of the first stuff we ask. So again, it's not the organizations, because it seems like everyone's trying to get information out there. That's the kind of the beauty of having that Marino Foundation. Interesting that people will tag in and say, oh, I heard Dan has a child with autism. And so they'll come to us. And so I think this community works together, that if they call us, I talk about CARD, or we talk about what's out there and try to give that. So that's among us. But with the schools, that's why it's important that we continue to work with not only the private schools, charter schools, but with all the public schools. And I'm lucky enough to really know the Miami-Dade people, and they just really committed, wonderful people, longtime people too. Long ago, they would have been out, too, but they're still there, because it's a vocation. When you work with people, it really becomes that. It's hard. I'm getting ready to transition, eventually, and it's hard. It's hard because, like, we're just moving offices now, and I am taking an ungodly amount of time because, oh my gosh, I'm going back. I have stuff from 1996, and I'm looking at it, and and I've got more in storage than we'll ever use. I keep telling I want to start a Marino museum, because it's so, you see all the work that was done and all the people, and it's really, and so I think you find that a lot. Like Michael, we've talked about it, okay, how many more years, but it's in you, and you've met so many wonderful, wonderful people, and it's purpose. It becomes purpose, and for the Marinos and Mike, legacy, just that legacy. And that's very important to me. I mean, wonderful people. I've been blessed to be able to work for the Marinos. Yeah.
I'm a big nostalgia guy, and you guys are moving into Nova, right?
Uh-huh.
I think that'd be a great place for a Dan Marino museum. It'd be a fantastic place.
I love it.
We'll see what Nova thinks. Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to write that down. I love it. Yeah.
Michael, there are celebrities who are famous and those that are infamous. Your dad's famous and loved here in South Florida. So I think that there would be a great spot for a Dan Marino museum at the school. Would be great.
You got to convince mom and dad too first. So
yeah, I
well, we'll just set it up and invite them over.
Yeah,
say,
there you go.
There you go. Surprise. Michael, about 90% of my conversations are with professionals like Mary, who work in the autism field, and about 10% are with people who are on the spectrum. Now, as a person on the spectrum, what kind of future are you looking to build for the next generation?
I really just want, a world, a future where people on the spectrum can just be able to live their most fulfilled lives, to be able to be
life. Yes, everybody's different.
Yes, to be able to be empowered, to be able to have that opportunity to, just live a life that they want to live, and have the experiences that they want to have.
That's great. Now, I've got 5 last questions I want to ask you guys.
All right.
All right. So the first question is for Michael. One word that best describes independence for autistic adults.
I mean, real life is probably independence. It's having those opportunities to be able to be your own person and to be out there and live, like I mentioned earlier, live the most fulfilling version of your life. I mean, I guess I would say it's independence.
Okay, great.
Not that that's my question, but also choice. Have choices.
Yeah.
It's a good one too.
Yeah.
And then
I only thought of it when you were talking. I would have given it to you.
And the earlier the intervention, the more choices you're going to have.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, Mary, next one's for you. One myth about autism that needs to disappear.
There's a lot of myths about autism. For me, it's right now it's the families, that there's something a parent has done to cause this. That's really resonating with me right now, because we fought so many years, with Skinner and refrigerator baby or refrigerator moms and that kind of stuff. So I want parents to be empowered, to know that they've got a blessing, even though it's a tough road, but that they're empowered, and I know, and their child knows they're doing everything that they can for their child. So to me, that's right now something that I think is a myth.
When my daughter was diagnosed, somebody told my wife and I, it's nobody's fault. So don't be looking like back in the rear mirror. Mm-hmm. Well, this happened, and then she had a regression. It just is what it is. Nobody's fault, and because we don't know.
Yeah.
And then we just move forward. Michael, next question is for you. One thing autistic adults should stop apologizing for.
Being yourself. If you want to be real, just being yourself. You have your own special abilities, your own special way of thinking, your own special likes and dislikes and this and that. Just, never feel like you can't be the person that you are.
Right. Mary, one thing employees should stop fearing. I'm sorry, employers.
That this is by hiring someone with autism, that it's going to create
Liability.
a burden, a liability for, it's totally the opposite. Like Dr. Alexandri had commented, totally the opposite is what we find, and not just by anecdotal, but proven. The numbers prove it.
Well, that's what was great about Michael's comment is that they actually did a study.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't like, well, I have an idea or I think or an opinion, because everybody's got an opinion, but they actually did a study on the numbers and never showed that they were actually good for the bottom line.
The U.S. Labor Department has done it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's
multiple
multiple studies out, but they all are concurrent and all show the same thing. Yeah.
Great. Michael, last question for you. Finish the sentence. A good life means.
A good life means being able to live the life you really want to have, to be able to enjoy the life the way you want to enjoy it, and to be able to have those opportunities to be the best person you can be.
Great.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Michael, because I had on this attorney who has a very profoundly autistic sibling. So that person can't advocate for themselves. They can't tell you what a good life means. So if you're the parent or the sibling taking care of a profoundly autistic person, how do we define the good life for that person?
That's a tough one. I think in the end, if I had to say from a personal standpoint, does that person really feel like they're enjoying their life? And, does it feel like they are getting the most out of their life?
Are they safe? So when I look, if you're just looking at this, is that person safe? When do they have interaction? And the interaction may be just sitting in a chair and observing and not really, but there's certain, is there some function of a day, like my life or your life? Is there something, do they eat? When do they come for meals? Are they now we're talking profound, right? Yeah, so are they eating meals? But safe. Because many times I see someone that's profound that a lot of sometimes self-injurious or sometimes being vulnerable. So that when you ask that, my thing is safe, and also has, even if it's just, even if it's a community room or something, are they being exposed so that they can get out, even if they're not interacting? Is that there? That's that sort of thing, I would see too,
And that goes back again to the early planning.
Yeah.
Because if you wait till late in their life or your life, your options are much, much smaller.
Try to get them into a good facility.
Yeah. And that takes time.
The numbers are huge. The one thing is that the numbers are shifting. So the other community really doesn't have a choice, because there's soon, and I love it. I have a friend, Ari Neerman, that with ASAN, and he said to me one time, he said, listen, this is evolution. We are coming, the neurodivergent, that we're just ahead of our times, and that. And so, so look now when communities are being built, like downtown in Miami, and that you've got young people they want to live where their stores are, because they don't want to drive and all that. So there's a lot of influence from neurodivergent people with this. And so, it's coming together, as you do it, but nothing comes together just by chance. There has to be that purposeful planning. And that's why it's important that people, parents, families are involved in every city meeting, anytime the developers are out there, and stuff. It's important how all that comes together. Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same in Broward County, but in Dade County, I find that the leadership is very open. Very approachable. So, and probably the same thing in Broward County.
Miami-Dade, amazing. I think they really do take the lead with it, though.
Really?
And
Yeah.
I think it's because so many of our representatives and so many people who have positions, you know, have you have someone wonderful in Miami-Dade called Brenda. Her name is Brenda Lampoon.
She's a friend of mine.
She
Yes.
used to be
Works
with
for the
me. I
mayor.
love her. Yeah, yeah. And she, we need people like
Yes,
that. Yeah, she's been wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a great person to get on here too, if you have not yet.
I'm in constant contact with her.
Okay. I love her. Yeah. yeah.
I bump into her all the time at different events. Yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah. We also have Raquel Regalado, who's got 2 kids on the spectrum.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the
Yeah.
county's very open, and I'm glad to hear that Broward is also open. But I think that Miami might be like the city on the hill, you know?
I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's
I
good to
think
hear.
so.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been an enlightening, charming, wonderful
Thank
conversation.
you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Let's turn to the camera and we'll sign off. So this has been the Autism Podcast at Miami's Community Newspapers with Mary Partin and Michael Marino of the Dan Marino Foundation. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.